what we did at the end of the last meeting was we recessed that hearing so that this is basically a continuation of that budget hearing. So at this time, I would entertain a motion to reconvene the budget subcommittee hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is from member Silverio, seconded by member Mariano. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries. So at this time, we've reconvened this meeting of the budget subcommittee. Superintendent, I will just throw it over to you for 1 second, just to get your take on the best way to go about this. We had left off, we had finished the review of all of the individual schools. I have us, based on the most recent copy of the budget that I have on page 66, academic services. And I just wanted to ask, do you want to, shall we pick it up from there and continue with the page by page, or was there anything that you wanted to, to begin with?
Sure, we're happy to follow that structure. We can also sort of connect back to some outstanding questions that were raised in our last meeting. If that's helpful, it might give additional context to what we'll see in the rest of the proposed budget.
Why don't we do that then?
Great. So as a reminder, when we met last week, you all developed and raised some really important and thoughtful questions. As a team, we got together and we're able to answer those questions along with the school leaders. And I'm going to let Maciel address those questions. If any of these raise additional thoughts for you or additional questions or concerns, feel free to let us know. We'll take notes during this meeting if we're unable to answer your questions in the moment.
Great.
Maciel is going to be sharing the screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm guessing you guys can all see my screen at this moment.
Yep.
So these are the questions that we had that were provided for us during the last budget hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and go with the first one. And there was a request for more revenue detail. I would ask that you please refer to pages 8 and 9 in the budget book. And then if you have any additional questions on additional breakdowns from anything in those pages, please let me know. There were FTE questions in regards to changes with the Hennessy. We did take a look at where those changes were happening and why, and most of them all have to do with changes due to adjustments in position control number and individuals within them. The Partham Elementary, there was a question in why there was such a shift into educational expenses. And the reason for that is because in fiscal 20, a lot of the teachers were photocopying materials. And so for fiscal 21, there was a desire to be able to provide them those materials so that they didn't have to go ahead and photocopy them. And so that's the biggest reason for that shift that happened within that school. For Frost Middle, there was a shift with the dean. The dean was changed to a content coach. So that is why you see a change in FTE into administrators. For the Up Leonard, that has to do with precision control number adjustments. There was no actual added or no decrease in teachers there. The question for the Adult Learning Center was, what does their wait list look like and what is an estimate for a lease? An estimate for a lease for the Adult Learning Center would come to about $255,000 a year. The square footage we used was 15,000 square footage and the amount was $17 per square foot. And their wait list currently has 617 students. They actually divide their wait list in between two different types of lists. The wait list with 275 students are all students that have been placed. That have taken the placement test, which means that they can start classes as soon as there is room available. And then there's the inquiry list with 342 students on it. And those are students that have not taken the placement test yet, that have requested an interest and are waiting for the ability to be able to take that test. There were questions around the Student Opportunity Act monies in regards to what FTEs that would be covered within it. There will be more detail provided from the team on Wednesday's LAE board meeting, but just to give a bit of a preview and a summary, there would be a loss of 69 FTEs. That would be broken up between 22 FTEs that were for the inclusion and co-teaching for students with disability and EL students, and also 47 FTEs for student support services. There was a question regarding clarification of resources and the shifts in resources with Gilmet Middle. The decrease in stipends was done so to cover an additional photocopier that the school signed up for. And also there was a shift in the way grant monies were categorized to better support the teachers and the students. The Arlington had to shift an increase into stipends due to there was a grant that was changed to designate to cover a summer program. And so the summer program required stipends to the teachers that would be participating in that. And that's why there was such an increase in stipends there. The Weatherby shift in resources is also related to allowable expenses by the grant they receive. And then other questions was a list of schools and the grants they receive. You wanted to see a comparison from one year to the next and be able to see the variance. I have set up the ability to show you a spreadsheet that shows that exact information. So I will go ahead and walk you through that. I started sharing it right now. So the Adult Learning Center in FY20 received $868,000 in grants. The high school received $4,000. Arlington Middle received $104,000. Gilmet Elementary received $108,000. Gilmet Middle, $391,000. Partham Elementary, $130,000, and the Weatherby, $309,000 last year. This year. And for FY21, the Adult Learning Center will see an increase of $54,000. The high school did not receive that $4,000 grant again, so that's why they're showing a decrease in $4,000. The Arlington will receive an additional $4,200. Gilmet Elementary is receiving an additional $3,700. Gilmet Middle is receiving an additional $50,000. And Partham Elementary is receiving an additional $493. And the Weatherby will receive the exact same level of funding as they received last year.
Great.
Then finally, that brings us to the request to submit a budget with a 10% reduction. So at this point, that is an exercise that would require quite a bit of work from our leadership team and our principals to spend down priorities and reevaluate available funds. So that is something that we would need a little bit more time to be able to fully execute. So I'm not sure if there's any follow-up questions to the answers I just provided.
So let me go down the list. I'll do what we've been doing. I'll do it in alphabetical, and then on the next set of questions, we'll go reverse alphabetical. So Pat Mariano, any questions on the what was just presented, which were requests from the last meeting?
No, I think I'm all set right now. I'm just back checking some of my pages, but I think you've answered everything I had requested. Thank you.
Mayor Rivera.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. That's very thorough. Can we get a copy of the sheets, and secondly, you kind of went. You said something about the revenues, and I don't remember I couldn't really tell. You were saying that there's a new page with the revenues, or has it been updated in the book? I'm not sure if I got that.
No, so there were no updates to it in the book. Pages 8 and 9 detail the 3 revenue sources that we have. So if you want to elaborate any further on anything in pages 8 and 9 of the budget book, or if you'd like me to elaborate, I should say, any further on any of the information on those 2 pages, I could gladly do so if you just let me know exactly which category you'd like me to dig into a little bit further, because most of our funding comes from either Chapter 70 money or the city. And then the remainder of the funding is grant.
I think if you look at the revenue sheet on the front page of last year's book, it actually has, how much money we were getting for Title I, how much money we were getting from different federal disbursements, how much we're getting from different state disbursements. It's not Chapter 70. And, I think even the school lunch program was in there. So again, I would show you it if I don't have it. I didn't expect to show you, but it's in the front of last year's book. It talks specifically about all the revenues, and it broke down even the big federal and state grants. It's probably trying to draw a picture of the whole budget, how much money comes in the door. And so I know we oftentimes say there's only a couple sources for it, but I want to know how much money you're getting in for Title I, how much you're getting in for other stuff. And you're seeing it over year. It's helpful. If you want to take a couple seconds, but I can pull up this. You've seen your budget, so I don't want to show you that. It's on the front page, one of the front pages. So that level of detail is important because I can see, we're getting more Title I money, we're getting less. Is there a new sort of funding in there? And I don't want to overstate it.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and take a look at that page in the last year's budget book and see how I can show something similar.
Can we get your cheat sheet here? These questions from LAE Board. That's pretty cool.
Sure. So you'd like this forwarded to you as well as the other spreadsheet, correct?
Yeah, but I want the revenue short to everybody else, and the spreadsheet.
Sure. And the additional breakdown similar to last year's. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep.
I was on mute. Ventura, any questions?
I am all good right now. Thank you.
Okay. Julia, any questions?
I'm good, thanks.
Great. Maciel, thank you. And why don't we pick it up in the budget book on page 66, Central Office Academic Services. Maciel, is there anything that you want to preface on this, or should we just go right to questions?
I think we can go right to questions if you just give me 1 second. Jumping over to the revenue pages in the budget book through my spot off from where I originally was. So if you just give me 1 moment,
Sure.
just make my way back. Okay. So academic services doesn't have very many changes, and neither budget nor FTE changes, so we can hop right into any questions that you might have.
Okay, great. Julia, any questions on academic services?
No, I see that there's a variance of $11,000, and I assume is due to the staffing and the principals and administrators.
Sorry, give me 1 second. Apparently my screen is not sharing as I thought it was. Is everybody able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I apologize. Can you repeat your question, please?
No, I just made kind of a comment that the variance reflected is because of the addition of an administrator or a principal or?
No, so that change in staffing is just due to any contractual obligations to salary increases.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ventura, questions?
Nope, I'm good right now. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Rivera, questions?
What page is this book? This page in your book is this?
66.
66, I believe.
I have it as I have it as 66. It's the first page of central office, and it's academic services.
Okay, great. I'm all set.
Great. Pat Mariano?
I'm just going to question the zeros and the no changes. How things remain the same, Maciel, with the purchase services. Why is that again? I hate to nitpick, but why do those items remain the same?
My assumption is going to be is that the same thing will be covered again this year, but I think if we can have someone else on the team maybe provide further clarity, if they are unable to, I will definitely research that for you.
Yeah, Pat, this is Mary jumping in. It's just we're considering the same level of support for the schools under those lines. The schools provide most of the academic support themselves. So these are some things that we take care of centrally that are pretty consistent, and we don't expect much change. But again, it's a snapshot sort of into the future. It may change a little as we transfer, but we're not anticipating much change there at all.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mary, can you give us a sense of just, sort of generally what falls under purchase services for this category, and what falls under educational expenses?
So for purchase services, it might be an educational contract. There might be some district-wide PD that we do that we invite all educators to take part of. And then for educational expenses, it might be more of a blended learning solution where we're purchasing some licenses for students to access. And we might do that as a district as opposed to each school purchasing their own, if it's something that we can get a good buy on if we do a quantity of scale purchase. But again, they're small in terms of what we do on a larger scale, school by school.
Great. Thank you. All right, moving to Assistant Superintendent on 67. Maciel, I don't know if you or another member of the team want to talk us through this one.
Sure, so I can actually talk you through, I'm pretty sure, the glaring $2 million increase that is showing there. And that has to do with the way the title grant was written for this coming fiscal year. So there was it wasn't actually $2 million that was added into there. It was kind of spread in between different categories in regards to how the grant was written to cover all educational expenses. So just to kind of back up a little bit, a lot of the title grant money is administered at the district level and then used to support the schools throughout the year. So even though it seems very district high level in this, it's just the way we budget for it to be able to push it down to the schools throughout the year. And the biggest chunk of that is for educational expenses, so to assist with curriculum and materials and any PD associated with any new curriculums that the schools might be picking up.
Okay. Pat Mariano, any questions?
I'm looking at the staffing, teachers and instructional coaches. Now, what's the role of those teachers? Do they support the schools? Are they housed in the schools, or are they central office people?
So Pat, I'll jump in here with this budget that I'm managing. These are district-wide positions that happen to be our district-wide arts people that are doing district-wide theater arts, district-wide visual arts, district-wide music. And there's a couple of part-time people that are included there.
Okay. I think that's it on this page. Maciel explained that 2 million, so I think I'm all set.
And just to add to that 2 million, that's also summer school budgeting as well.
Mayor Rivera,
I'm all set for now.
Ventura Rodriguez.
Yeah, and Maciel, you explained it very well. I just got to make sure I comprehend. So with the new way that you all apply for the title fund, so is basically, would that money have appeared in other places in the budget for like FY20, but it's showing up here now because this is how you all wrote the title grants?
My understanding is that it would have showed up in other areas throughout the budget last year. I'm not sure if it would have showed up in one singular spot that you'll
right,
yep. Go through. It would depend on how the grant was written last year, how it would be visible throughout the budget.
Okay, and again, did I hear you say that things like curricular materials would be potentially funded out of this line?
It could be, yes. If it's Title I would be related to anything that's an intervention. So if they received any intervention PDs or for their staff, if any of the schools adopted a new intervention curriculum, any of the PD associated with that would be covered in this line. Assistance with covering the expenses of that new curriculum would also be covered in this line.
Okay, great. And I'm wondering, both for you, Maciel, and maybe Superintendent, does the fact that the money shows up here now, sort of in the central line, does it represent the sort of shift in approach with like how PD or curricular decisions are being made?
No, it has no relationship to the fact that schools continue to have autonomies and we have a menu of options for supports and enrichments and interventions that they still have a choice in opting in.
Got it. So it's really just a sort of a budgeting and sort of, again, grant application approach that seems to be different from last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a place to house it and for management purposes and for us to be accountable, as you all know, with this issue of supplanting versus, all those stipulations that grant funding has. And we have a person, as you all know, also Chris Heath, who is managing all of our entitlements. And so it's just easier to keep it in one place and manage it. But it continues to remain school-based where school leaders and their staff tell us what the need is, and we supply the menu, and then we push it out to the schools.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I'm all set, John.
Great. Julio Silverio?
I'm all set. Thank you.
Great. So moving to page 68, budget and finance.
Sure. So here, there were no major changes to last year on here. You're seeing shifts in staffing on the bottom of this. There was, I believe, there should have been a kind of like a swap, if you will, between myself and an additional clerk that was put as a vacancy in last year. So this additional one is not actually, that has to do more with shifting in position controls from one year to the next, with 2 new staff members joining the team last year. And also there was a shift in clerks moving up to an exempt. There was a promotion. One of the payroll clerks became the payroll manager.
Okay. Julio Silverio?
I'm all set, yeah.
Okay. Ventura Rodriguez?
I am all set. Thank you.
Mayor Rivera?
All set. Thank you.
Patricia Mariano?
Just a question, Maciel. the utilities and maintenance line item, does the, is this a placeholder for central office, the utilities and maintenance for that building?
It is.
Okay, and it doesn't appear anywhere else?
No.
Okay. And all right, you explained the change in positions. I'm all set, thank you.
Marisol, what's covered under the purchase services?
So purchase services is mainly going to be any type of PV that the superintendent covers throughout the year. It sometimes gets put into this one area here, as well as any contract and consulting services that might arise. This is more of a covering for in case things come up budget line. You would be able to see exactly what it gets spent on when I present the actuals for the next LAE board meeting.
Okay. And what gets covered under operating expenses?
Sure. So that has a lot of our photocopiers for central office, a lot of the central office operating expenses, mailings, photocopies, paper, a lot of those things that kind of keep us functioning in the central office.
Great. Okay. Page 69, communications.
Sure. So no major shifts here. This is, if I'm not mistaken, mostly covered by a grant as well.
Patricia Mariano.
I'm all set, thank you.
Mayor Rivera.
All set.
Ventura Rodriguez.
I'm all set, thanks.
Julia Silverio.
All set.
Great. All right, page 70. Community, family, and student engagement.
Sure. So again, no major changes here. I believe there was some loss in grant funding in this department from last year to this year. But other than that happening, there were no FTE changes here, and I'm free to answer any questions.
Okay. Julia Silverio.
I'm all set.
Ventura Rodriguez.
Yeah, thanks. Quick question. I did see the drop in the stipends, and I know that I think you said you lost some grant funding, but what did those stipends cover?
So I will actually ask Denise if she could please help us with some clarity on that.
Sure. So stipends, this is a large move. It's actually not a decrease, but a move to another department. Our individual who manages tutoring for the district manages all the stipends that educators receive who do tutoring services for students who are out of school. That individual is now reporting to a different department, so those stipends should show up in a different line item.
Perfect. Okay, but these are mainly for educators who are doing schooling for students, and it'll be somewhere. Okay, perfect. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Patricia Mariano.
A follow-up question with that 101. So it's not a grant that's ending, it's just a movement of that money to another location?
100% correct. 100% correct. That is just moving to another location.
All right, which location is it moving to?
So the individual who manages tutoring also supports all of the online supports for students at the High School Learning Center at the high school. And so that individual and these funds were being moved over to Assistant Superintendent Marisol Sheets.
Okay. All right, so there'll be no shortage of engagement activities.
No, everything remains. Everything remains. It's just because this individual was splitting their time in my department and with the high school, we just decided to call it a day and move them one place or the other.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, great. Page 71, ELL services.
Okay. I don't have much to contribute in this area. Everything looks essentially the same to last year, pretty much.
Right. Patricia Mariano.
I'm all set. No, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Rivera.
Thank you.
Ventura Rodriguez.
Yep, all set, thanks.
Julio Silverio.
All set.
Okay. Maciela, would love to get some sense of what's covered under educational expenses in ELL services, and what the 3 staff do.
Sure. So I'd like to ask Kenan if she could go ahead and answer that.
Sure. So John, all of the educational expenses, all of the line items you see here, what supports any after school, Saturday school, anything out of school time for our English learners. So that's what the stipends support, as well as the educational expenses. So materials for teachers to use in after school, summer school, etc. This budget includes our Title III grant, which is where most of the educational expense line comes from. Then the 3 staff members are myself. I'm the Director of English Learner Services. We have 2 English Learner Facilitators. One that is focused on grades 9 through 12 is based at the high school, and one that is at central office focused on pre-K to 8.
Great. Thank you, Kenan. Page 72, facilities.
Sure. So facilities, you see, I think most of what's causing the shift that you're seeing here that doesn't seem like it was actually truly level funded is that there were additional resources allocated to facilities from the additional monies received last year that were not part of this budget book because that money was approved afterwards. So other than that major thing that you're seeing here, that would be what's going with the biggest drive in the change here. Other than that, everything's pretty much the same.
Great. I can't remember who's going first this time. Is it Julio or Patricia?
I think it's me, John.
All right, Patricia Mariano.
All right, Maciel, I didn't quite understand that big change in the operating expense line item. Can you explain that again, please?
Sure. So this has to do with an allocation of funding that was made to the facilities department with the money that was, I believe, additionally allotted. But if Anne Marie could chime in, actually, maybe she could explain it a little bit better than I'm explaining it. But it is level funded to this current year. I believe it just has to do with changes that were made post the budget book last year.
Yep. Hi, Pat. How are you? And good evening, all members. There was additional money that was given by the city when the FY budget was completed. That money was put into the FY21 budget, and we matched that budget this year. So there were not funds that were decreased. It was actually increased before the year started.
Okay.
It's basically for student stipends if you're looking in the salaries and the benefits, if that's what you're interested in, Pat. And then in terms of operating expenses, it's
right.
Improvements that are done to the school. So additional, when Chris comes and gives you your slideshow where he shows you all the work that he's doing, that's where that funding came from. We level funded that this year, hoping that we'll still be able to maintain that kind of services provided to the schools.
Okay. All right, I'm all set. Thank you.
John?
Mayor Rivera.
I'm all set.
Ventura Rodriguez.
Yep, I'm set, thanks.
Julio Silverio.
I'm all set.
I think if people can make sure they're muted when they're not speaking, that'd be great. I'm just getting a lot of feedback here.
My bad, sorry.
73 grants management.
Sure. So this department is just covering the grants department. There's 3 individuals in here, 2 support staff and 1 clerk. This includes also Chris Heath, who is the grants manager. He's allocated to this section here, and everything is essentially almost the same to last year.
Great. Julio Silverio.
Sorry, I thought I responded. I'm all set. Thank you.
Great, gotcha. Ventura Rodriguez.
I'm fine. Just real quick, I think there's an error on the variance, the subtotal variance for non-salary costs, the 892. Just to point that out.
Mayor
Otherwise,
Rivera.
I'm all set.
I'm all set.
Patricia Mariano.
Yeah, I had found that error too. Thank you, Ventura.
And Maciel, can you just confirm that you see that where that number seems out of whack?
I did, and I fixed it.
Great. Okay. 74 health services.
Okay, so health services is very similar to last year. No FTE changes here. So it's open for questions.
Okay, Patricia Mariano.
Maciel, do these positions cover nursing that's required by an IEP?
That's correct, Pat. These are the LPNs that are in classrooms and on the buses for students because it's requirement of their individual education plan.
Okay. So the schools aren't responsible for this, the district accounts for them?
That's correct. And it also includes a lead nurse that we have in the district.
Okay.
Mayor Rivera.
All set, thanks.
Great. Ventura Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, Julio Silverio.
I'm all set, thanks.
Great. Mary, just I think I may be asking the same thing Pat is, but I guess just for my own certainty. So these are these one-to-ones?
Yes, they're usually one-to-ones. And I also want to point out that we fund those from our Fund Code 262, our IDEA federal grant.
Great.
So it's part of their IEP.
Great. Thanks. Okay, 75 human resources.
Sure. So this this department, again, it doesn't have any major changes to it. There was a shift, it seems, in staffing, and I'm guessing that was very likely to do with changes in position control. Other than that, I believe this department is pretty straightforward and open to any questions you might have.
Great. Julio Silverio.
I'm all set.
Ventura Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm all set as well. I think actually, let me not say that if I'm not set. Sorry. So just because I see the variance in salaries seems it's not extremely high, but a little higher So I just want to confirm here. I see that there's, I don't know if it's a reclassification or a new type of role into support staff / exempt from BBEs and tutors. Can maybe just probably a little more clarity on what the shift is that's happening here? And maybe another thing to think about is how much of it is, of the variance is related to just, sort of increases in the cost of the contracts.
So the salary increases are to do with any contractual obligations, and it actually seems like the shift in the BBEs and tutor fellows. And Anne Marie, I'll ask you to jump in and definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but that almost seems like a cleanup in classification. But please chime in and let me know if I'm correct.
So in terms of the salaries and benefits, we pay for some BBEs and some tutors and fellows out of this salary line as well as long-term subs. So there is some contractual information, and we did have an increase to a support staff person. We have an additional clerical person who was assigned to human resources last year and is new to the Santa is new this year to our department. So there was an actual person that was added as part of the budget request last year. And that number was not in the final budget when we put through, it was in the revised budget. But there is more than one BBE tutor / fellow that covers the BBEs that we cover for the district, the long-term subs. So if a teacher is on leave and is out of sick time, the responsibility of that then falls at the human resources department level. So that varies.
Got it. So all those like long-term subs and things don't factor into the 8 FTEs that we see at the bottom. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is 8 FTEs in terms of how many people that you have working in the human resources department, but there is more than one. We just call it one because it's a moving target.
I see. Okay, I'm all set. Thanks for that explanation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay. Mayor Rivera?
I'm all set. Thanks.
Okay. Patricia Mariano?
All set, thank you.
Great. Okay, page 76, Information Systems and Technology.
Sure. So this department, you're going to notice a shift in 1 FTE. My understanding is that they do have a position that remains vacant. And then any shifts that have happened are solely related to any contracts or renewals that may have increased or decreased throughout the time. I'm open to questions.
Patricia Mariano?
Just the SEL, the increase in stipends, what does that entail?
I can actually look into what the increase in stipends was related to, unless Anne Marie knows without any additional research necessary.
I can tell you that we have provided stipends to teachers so that we now have a technology person at each of the schools that is working on that. I would venture to go into that a little deeper, Pat, and get you that answer later, but that is an additional stipend. And we have had a director leave who was responsible for our power school and have been contracting some services for those, and that could be also addressing the stipend issue. But I would want to get a more solid answer for you.
All right, and would the negative on the salaries be the person that left?
Correct.
That is correct. But we are getting, that position is going to be hired, and we're actually going to be hiring 2 techs as opposed to filling the position at the higher level.
I'm sorry, you're hiring 2 what?
Technical assistants, 2 more
Okay.
people to support the schools.
All right, this may sound like a stupid question. If you plan on hiring 2 more people, wouldn't that, oh, all right, never mind, I answered my own question. Okay, I'm all set.
Okay. Mayor Rivera?
All set. Thank you.
Great. Ventura Rodriguez,
I'm all set, thanks.
Julia Silverio.
All set, thanks.
Great. Okay. We'll go to 77 LPS Media.
Sure. So again, this is a fairly simple budget. Not much has changed in terms of the setup of it. So I'll be open to answering any questions.
Good. Julia Silverio,
I'm all set.
Ventura Rodriguez,
All set, thanks.
Mayor Rivera.
All set, thank you.
Great. Patricia Mariano.
All set, thank you.
All right. 78 School Safety.
Sure. So this department also hasn't seen many major changes to it at all. I'm going to assume that it's open for questions.
Great. Patricia Mariano.
All right, Maciel, the money for utilities and maintenance, what does that entail for school safety?
I'd actually have to look into that and get back to you. My assumption is that it has to do with the maintenance of the cameras, security cameras, but I'll ask Anne Marie if she could please confirm, but I'm almost positive that there is maintenance that's done to some of the security equipment that would flow through here. It's not utilities. I think it's the maintenance side more so than the utility side.
That is correct.
Okay, and the staffing, there's 3 safety officers. Where are they assigned?
They are assigned at one is assigned at central office. The other 2 are assigned at different schools. If you recall, in some of your questions, you had asked the LAE didn't have a person, and we said it's in the central office budget because we were having some moves. Those other 2 positions are housed in schools. I can get you exactly. The LAE jumps out at me because I remember that one from our last meeting. But
Right.
there's one at central office. There's one at the LAE. I want to say the other one is at the LFA elementary, early childhood school. And then there's our director, manager is the exempt person. And
So
he's
in
at
this-
the high school.
So in this new budget, just for argument's sake, we were talking about the LAE. The LAE didn't budget for a school safety officer. It's going to come from central office.
The LAE did budget for a school safety officer, but because of some issues that were going on, for some reason, it was put into the FY, into this budget here. It is being moved out of this budget and into the LAE. It's just a
Okay.
position control issue that we have to
All
make the adjustment for.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor Rivera.
I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. Ventura Rodriguez,
Yep, I'm all set, thank you.
Julia Silverio.
All set, thank you.
Page 79, Special Education.
Sure. So this department is one of those departments that's quite dynamic as well because IDEA grants money sits here. Also, you're going to see an interesting FTE landscape here. If I'm not mistaken, and I'll let Mary chime in and correct me or add to anything I'm saying, but all of our district-wide special ed supports sit here in this department, and I'm pretty sure Mary can give you a better breakdown of why the budget is set up the way that it is.
You guys will remember that we entered into a pretty dramatic redesign of the Office of Student Support, launched a new office to include several other departments, and the largest one being special education. And included in the current year budget as part of the redesign were 8 FTEs that the district deemed really necessary because of services like speech therapy, occupational therapy, and Spanish language interpreters. And so those 8 FTEs that you see there are in the current budget. They were just added after the budget book last year was already done, but they were funded in the current FY20 budget and will continue into FY21.
Okay. Julio Silverio,
I'm all set, thanks.
Ventura Rodriguez,
Yep, I'm all set, thanks.
Mayor Rivera.
What was that acronym that you said at the beginning? What type of grants?
I'm sorry,
Um,
the Office
Marcel
of
mentioned-
Student Support.
no, Marcel talked about a certain
The
specific grant.
IDEA grant.
What is that?
Oh, that's the federal fund code 262 and 240. The Individual with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, is the federal terminology for those funding sources from the federal government.
Okay, and there are positions in here that were added from the extra money we got last year, not from city money, but from state money?
I believe that the positions that were added from local money, but we do have positions in here that are on the grant and have been on the federal grant for a number of years.
But not new ones?
Not the new ones, I do not believe. I'd have to go back and check each one. The 8 positions that we added at the beginning of this current school year, I believe were all added as local.
Okay, thank you.
Patricia Mariano.
Mary, I just want to make sure with these therapists, the speech therapists, we're not deleting a speech therapist, right?
We are
Where
not.
The district has been so short and we've
We
been
added-
involved in compensatory services.
We added 3 speech therapists. As a matter of fact, Pat, we want a speech therapist resign in August before the school started, and we converted that to another full-time speech therapist because we know how short-staffed we've been and how the need has increased. And I can also tell you that for the first time in a number of years, we're fully staffed at the moment in our speech therapy department. And so we were anticipating being very smooth until the current situation. So we may have some compensatory moving forward, but not as a result of being short-staffed.
Okay, and the purchase services, the 9 million, whatever, could you just explain a little bit of that?
So obviously that's a variety of services that we require. A lot of it is professional development, other consultants that we need. One area that we are not fully staffed in is with our school psychologists. And so we've had to go out and contract for school psychology and evaluation services. And so that takes up a big chunk of that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. All right, so page 80, Superintendent's Office.
Sure. So the change in FTE that you're going to see here is this is where Marisol Sheets FTE currently sits, and that's why you're seeing an increase from 1 year to the next. Other than that, this budget is pretty much the same as it was last year.
Okay, Patricia Mariano,
All set, thank you.
Mayor Rivera,
Wasn't Superintendent Sheets on the payroll last year? Did anybody get that?
Assistant Superintendent Marisol?
Yeah, wasn't she on the payroll last year? Was she just in a different place?
I'm not quite sure I don't think if I'm not mistaken, Assistant Superintendent Marisol started this year. So I don't think she would have been in last year's.
That's correct. So it
Okay.
shifted, but she is new to the position. She backfilled Assistant Superintendent Mary Lou Bergeron.
okay.
And I believe that Mary Lou's position last year was budgeted in a completely different place, and it may have been under under student support services or special education.
So Mary Lou Bergeron also was interim superintendent, so that's part of the shift.
All that happened less than a year ago.
That's correct. It was about 18
goodness.
months ago. I know. It feels like a, it feels like a world ago.
Holy chowder.
Ventura Rodriguez,
I'm all set. Thank you.
Julia Silverio.
I'm all set.
Okay, great. Page 81, transportation.
Sure. So in here, the only change is there was a slight increase from last year to this year for transportation. The $4,000 increase is just contractual obligations. There are no major changes in this department.
Okay. Julia Silverio.
Just, Maciel, if you could go over the purchase services.
Sure, that's our NRT contract. And Anne-Marie, if you want to chime in, if it's anything other than that, but I think that's all of our NRT contracts and our transportation expenses. They're all purchase services.
That is correct. That accounts for our large buses, our special ed buses, our homeless transportation, and our enrichment transportation.
Thank you.
Good.
I'm all set.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Ventura Rodriguez.
I'm all set. Thanks.
Mayor Rivera.
So why is it up $207,000?
Sorry, go ahead, Anne-Marie.
There is a slight escalation in that contract due to fuel that it incurs, and that's what that's representing.
We should probably not use slight with $207,000. I think it's concerning. I just don't know if that, considering the what's going to happen this year. I just want to make sure that number's right. That's the big hard number for the city.
I can check that and get back to you.
Please do, because I don't want to get that wrong. And just whatever detail you can send my way about the number of kids and trips and just a breakdown of that stuff. I don't think I've seen the contract since we signed it last. But it's usually like $1 million a percentage point tax increase. So that's quarter of a percentage point tax increase.
Okay, no problem. Happy to do that.
Okay.
Patricia Mariano.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was going to bring that up also. When is our contract up with the transportation company?
It is a new contract this year for, I believe, our lodge, and they alternate, and I think we have one more year on our special ed, but I can verify that and get back to you on that as well, Pat, to give you accurate information.
Okay, and is any of these transportation costs reimbursable?
Some potentially could be within the circuit breaker, but we are not a regional school district, so transportation typically is not.
The homeless transportation doesn't fall under that reimbursement?
There are some reimbursements that we do put in for, but you have to hit a certain threshold first, Pat. So I will get back to you on exactly what we get for reimbursement regarding that, rather than give you an answer that I'm unsure of.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anne-Marie, is there any update relative to modifications in the contract due to the fact that there's no real need for school transportation right now and for the last 3 months of the year?
So we, as you know, have been asked by both the state and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed to work with our providers of both our transportation and our special education providers to make sure that we're doing what we can to help them stay solvent so that when we come back to school, those services are still there. And they have encouraged school districts to group together with their providers to ensure that that is the case. We have worked with 9 other school districts, including Haverhill, Andover, North Andover, Dracut, Burlington, Greater Lawrence Tech, Methuen. I can't think of the last one off the top of my head, but to work to an adjustment to their contract. An MOU has been sent to the mayor's office for consideration, and it is for paying for readiness services. It is not paying for services that are going to be, because that's illegal. They can't charge us for services that we're not using. They are calling them readiness services. We're also awaiting some pending legislation regarding that. But basically, we are helping to ensure that the staff stay on payroll and not go on unemployment, that we're helping to assist with insurance costs. There was a tremendous amount of back and forth with I'm going to call us the districts that worked on the NRT to come up with what we believe is the fair and most equitable agreement that we can have. That is keeping those vehicles insured as well. So we're not at the end of that road, but we have come up with an agreement.
Great. Thank you for the update on that.
And I can give you just a little bit more from the perspective of our side, thinking about how, this money is in the budget right now. Our city attorney is going through it. And it is definitely how do we turn the buses on day one, September when we go back to school, or in December when we have summer school, without having to fish through this huge unemployment glut, and also having to go through the bureaucracy of ensuring things. Seems like it makes sense to us, but we've got to make sure that the rate is right and all that, and that we are not spending money we don't have.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. All right, page 82, Talent Services.
Sure. So this is, I believe, our final department. This is where we pay for acceleration academies from. So that's why there's a stipend line that's so large, because that's where the acceleration academies come from. All operating and educational expenses are to cover any of the materials necessary for that. So I'll open that up to questions at this point.
Great. Patricia Mariano.
Yeah, I didn't realize Talent Services is a strange name for a department that just does the acceleration academies, and that was my question.
Yeah.
But this whole budget covers the February, the April, and part of summer school?
I believe it only covers February and April. Summer school was part of the title funding we discussed earlier that showed that $2 million increase. That was where summer school is housed. This is just the 2 acceleration academies.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just,
Mayor Rivera.
yeah, can I just, I think this is kind of one of those essential things that we do as a district, and so the funding of these acceleration academies, at some point there was money that came from the state. Is this now fully funded with Chapter 70 or with city money that basically before there used to be grants that funded them, but now this is all just kind of bundled into our normal budget?
This is folded into a local budget now.
Good. Okay.
Ventura Rodriguez.
I'm all set for now. Thanks.
Okay. Julio Silverio.
I'm all set, thank you.
Great. Okay, that completes our page-by-page review. I just want to make sure we've got all the additional info requests from today. Marciel, let me know what you've got in addition. I have the mayor's request for more revenue detail within the broader categories, using the federal funding as an example, to make sure we get the breakdown along, things like Title I, IDEA, Title II, so on. Looking at the model from last year as a guide, we had a request for more information around the IT stipends. We had a request around number of kids and trips on transportation. That's what I have. Anything else there?
Yep, nope, that's all I have as well. For the NRT contract, it's details on the increase and also some details on the number of students transported, correct?
Yep. All right, let me go through the members here just to see if there's any other additional requests, if there's any requests for additional information at this point. Julio Silverio.
No, I'm all set, thank you.
Great. Ventura Rodriguez.
All set, thanks.
Mayor Rivera.
Yeah, can I just show you? Can I show something to the group?
Please.
How do I do that?
Can we give the mayor
I got it.
share? Maciel may have to close out of her document for him to do that.
This is the revenue sheet that was in the book from last year. It's page 3 in the book.
Okay.
I want to make sure you're talking about this. That was all.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Patricia Mariano, any additional requests for information?
I just remembered something I had asked the last time, Maciel. Did you check into the cultural council money that went into the district?
Sure, I will add that one to the budget book for the showing of the book for the full LAE board meeting.
All right, because it was a little bit more than $34,000.
Correct. And I will make sure I add it to the funding sources in the budget book. I apologize for not doing it for this meeting.
Thank you.
Pat, that's living in the assistant superintendent budget. I'm managing that for the district.
So that falls into your?
Yep.
But I think the request you made for last budget hearing was to make sure that it was updated as one of the funding sources under the grants, correct, Pat?
Right, it's a one-time grant because it fluctuates from year to year.
Sure, and I'll make sure it pops up for. I'll make sure I update it for the board-wide vote for the next meeting.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Great. I will, and I'll go back down again in order for subcommittee members. If there's anything additional that any comments you want to make at this time, questions, any remaining questions, comments, anything along those lines. Patricia Mariano.
I'm all set. I want to thank the district and Maciel and the superintendent and her team for responding to our questions and going through this process painlessly. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat. Mayor Rivera.
Yeah, I'd like to also say thanks for that, for the effort and the quality of the information. I do want to say to folks that are watching this, it's this is a new and different way to go through a budget online and through this process. So I think that if you've seen the committee members kind of just go along, get through the book, I think you may see a different conversation, a little bit more robust, a little more in turn at the full board when everybody else is looking at it at the same time. And again, it is not these are not normal times, and so going through this budget process, I think, it feels awkward, and I'm sure it appears awkward from your end. But know that we are doing our due diligence, and we will ensure that whenever we pass the budget, is both lives up to the needs of the students and our stewardship as elected officials.
Thank you. Ventura Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'm all set on this budget. And again, just thank you for the work, putting it together, answering all of our questions and additional information. I guess I just wanted to ask as a follow-up, I know Marcia had mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting and the mayor brought it up last meeting, the different budget scenarios, including one where, potentially just 10% less in expenditures. I guess I just want to know, and I appreciate, and I heard at the beginning that obviously that's a pretty large exercise for people to do. So we don't have it right now, but I guess I'm just wondering, what are the next steps on that? And not just on that exercise, but as of right now, like, I don't know what the budget picture, I don't know what the budget details are for like from the state government, that'll impact our budget, but I think it's wise to start, having some contingencies. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, what are some next steps with that, for the district and then for us as a board?
Yeah, I can jump in here, Maciel. Thank you for your question, Ventura. I think for us, the next step is to revisit our priorities, to think about some efficiencies in order to meet those priorities, to scale back some big initiatives, to reconsider in terms of delaying some of these initiatives, and then more importantly, going back to our school-based leaders and their teams and asking them where there's some efficiencies and also some scaling back that we can do together. So it involves quite a bit of back and forth with two big teams right now. And so that would be our next step.
The only thing that I would add to that, Ventura, is that I think that we have gotten a ton of direction from DESE and from the governor's A&F and people putting together the budget from the speaker's side and the Senate president's side. And it is definitely a moving target. The sense is we might make it unharmed out of this year, given all the rainy day funds across the board, and that next year's budget process, I think immensely they never let you do is spend one-time monies on recurrent revenue needs, and so we might get a pass next year to get through that. So we might even be able to get through 2020 by the skin of our teeth, and then in 2021, have a budget, Student Opportunity Act notwithstanding, that gets us again held harmless in 2021. But then, I think all the chickens are going to come home to roost in 2022, where, we have to, when everybody's gone back to their sides, federal and state government said you got to deal with it on your own. And that's when we're looking at how the tax implications are going to be, at least in Lawrence and at the state level.
Got it. Thank you. And I think, Superintendent, I appreciate it. And I think you all doing some thinking about if we needed to make cuts. Hopefully we don't, but I think that's a wise exercise. And I guess just part of my comment as well is, I know it could be a lot of work. So it's just this balancing of like potentially asking schools to do a tremendous amount of work in a situation where it's just unknown, like even if we will need to make changes. So, it's just sort of stating the obvious that it's a hard decision. That said, I agree. And I think it's good that you all start from the district level projecting, all the things that you said, Superintendent. And hopefully, this isn't something that will affect us for next year. But as the mayor said, at some point it'll kick in. So.
Yeah, we agree. And our first goal is sort of not to affect student-facing services to the extent that we can't. But of course, and that might be inevitable. And so we, again, will start with thinking about what the priorities are. What are things that can be scaled, paused? What are the things that we can postpone? There are many things that we have to take in consideration before submitting a different scenario to you all, but we will be in very close communication. I wanted to add that these two past meetings have been really helpful to us in reflecting and thinking through this budget that we have put forth to you all before we bring to the rest of the board, and really appreciate you being thought partners during this process and helping us navigate during this incredible time. And so for that, I appreciate you all.
Great. Thank you, Superintendent. Julia Silverio, any questions, comments, anything?
No, I'm all set. I think I want to thank the staff and everybody for the work that they put to make this an easy transition for us. As you could see, we had a lot less questions we had last year. So as the mayor says, to put in that 10% contingency in place, so in hopes that maybe we'll have a little bit of safety net in the event that things don't go according to the way that they're planned. But thank you, congratulations, done a good job.
Thanks, Julia. Superintendent, do you want to offer any closing remarks? I know that you just made some eloquent remarks that kind of flowed out of the conversation. I don't know if you have anything additional you want to add.
Yeah, lastly, I wanted to thank the leadership team that is on this call, of course. And Maciel, again, this is her first year as our CFO, and she's done a remarkable job navigating this. And so I really appreciate the work that has gone into this process. I want to thank the school leaders who came well prepared to each of these meetings and advocated for their needs. As a result, we were able to present this to you all. And I ask that you all think of any additional questions or anything that's lingering before we go to the full board in order to get approval for this budget.
Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Thanks to your whole team. Maciel, thank you for your great work on your first LPS budget. And thank you to my fellow LAE members for all their thoughtful deliberation through the point we're at right now. I just will note a couple of pieces here. So I think there may be some slight modifications, but I think the way we will proceed here is that at the May LAE meeting, LPS will provide the additional information that was requested today, give us any sort of general budget update, and the full board will get a chance to ask questions at that point, knowing that the subcommittee has hopefully already covered the vast majority of pieces. I think just to follow sort of how we did it last year, just before that LAE meeting, we will have, I guess we will technically call a budget hearing for an opportunity for public comment as sort of a last call for public comment specific to the budget. Go into the LAE meeting, get the additional info, let the members ask any final questions. Then we'll take a first vote recommendation from the budget subcommittee, and then have a special meeting maybe a day after, strictly for the purpose of a final vote on the budget. So I think that's where we go with the budget process from here. If members have other concerns or suggestions, please feel free to email me individually on those, and I'm open to doing this, any number of ways, but that would mirror how it was done last year. Last piece, before we get to the May LAE meeting, we have a special LAE meeting this Wednesday. It is not specific to the proposed budget. It is specific to SOA, and we'll have a few other items on the agenda as well that the superintendent and I felt were a little more time sensitive, and we would want to pick them up before the May meeting. So we got the budget, picking that up again with the May meeting, but before that, this Wednesday, 4 p.m., special meeting of the LAE. We've got multiple items on the agenda, but the sort of big one is SOA. Any final comments or questions from anyone? I won't go through the roll. I'll just, if anybody's got anything, please go ahead.
John, just real quick, I think just for clarity, I know that in the book it has some pages where it shows SOA money and some where it doesn't. Can we just, just as part of the agenda item to vote on the FY 2021 budget, that's clear that we're voting on non-SOA budget and SOA budget. I know it's together in some places. I don't want to I'm not trying to make a hard thing about this. I just want to make sure we know the number is with SOA and what the number is without SOA. If that's part of the motion language. If we can get motion language before the meeting, that would be.
Yep. So points well taken, Mayor, and we'll circulate motion language before that meeting, and we'll delineate between SOA budget inclusive of SOA application or projection and without.
I can help John with any of the numbers or anything like that. If you would like to include it in the motion, I'd be happy to help.
That's great. Thank you. Much appreciated. Any other final comments? Great. Thanks again to everyone, Superintendent and your team. Thank you, Dave and Joan. Thank you for all the logistics and pieces that you do in putting these remote meetings together. Greatly appreciate it. At this time, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Budget Subcommittee.
So moved.
Second.
I have this motion by Mayor Rivera, seconded by Member Mariano. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. The motion carries at this time. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.